Good afternoon. My name is John Park. I run a validator company in Korea called A41, and I'm a moderator for staking and restaking panel today. I'm kicking Obal's hat today, who's not here. So let's start our today's panel with a brief short intro of each member. Let's start with Sean from Blockdaemon.
Hey everyone, my name is Sean. I work at Blockdaemon, and for those who don't know, we are a company that does staking, nodes, and wallet. And we do a lot of work with people like Lido. We do some work with Rocket Pool, and so we typically do the institutional staking landscape.
Hey everyone, this is Cassie from Hashquark. So Hashquark is one of the world-leading staking service provider, and we belong to Hashkey Group. We are one of the key business unit. Hashkey Group actually has its headquarters in Hong Kong and also operations in Singapore and Japan. So Hashkey Group is actually one of the most well-known licensed business group in Hong Kong market. And in case of Hashquark, we have been providing node validations and staking service to our clients since 2018, and we are supporting more than 40 POS mainstream chains, and more than 80 including testnet. Overall, our asset under staking reach out to 960,000 Ethereum. So yeah, happy to be here.
Hey everyone. Oh wow, okay. I'm Izzy. I'm a contributor to Lido DAO as Master of Validators. Lido is obviously a liquid staking protocol headquartered on Ethereum, but also present on Solana and Polygon currently. And myself and the rest of the contributors in my set of my work stream basically work with the node operators to facilitate processes and mechanisms between them, each other, and the rest of the DAO.
Hello, everybody. I'm Darren Langley. I'm the general manager of the Rocket Pool core team. Rocket Pool is a decentralized liquid staking protocol. We're currently the third largest in the space. We represent about 3% of all the staked. And we have, being decentralized, we have over 3,000 node operators in about 133 different geographic locations. So yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you, guys. I know a lot of you guys are expecting Lido versus Rocket Pool fire today, but I'm not gonna let that happen. Yeah, we can have some, but I'll rather focus on. I know that most of you guys have flown here from either from Hong Kong or from Seoul, and the continuation of the KBW chat. We want to actually focus on whether the or how much liquid staking protocols and the global validators are serious about the Asian market. Because I hear that some people were asking me, hey John, like, you know, we see so many US, European funds and players in Korea for Korea Blockchain Week. Are they here with like more serious intentions, or are they just here because the US is pushing them out? So let's hear from Lido and Rocket Pool first in terms of, like, you know, the question will be, is Asia really a strategic market for you? And if so, at the high level, what's your thoughts and directions in terms of Lido? And then we move on to a Rocket Pool for that question as well. And then I want to ask some technical questions to you guys. And then let's move on to Blockdaemon and Hashquark afterwards.
Sure. So I can take a first stab at this, and a bit of like a disclaimer here. And if anything I say is in a personal capacity, because I work for a DAO basically, and the decisions really are all made by the DAO. So I can give you my understanding of things, how I feel the DAO and the community generally look at things, and what I believe personally. So Asia and APEC specifically is definitely, like, in my opinion, the thing that we need to focus on in this kind of like next segment of the DeFi and crypto expansion in terms of enfranchising underutilized areas and users that potentially are finding new ways to transact and participate in like the new global digital economy. And the way that we're trying to do this, at least from a Lido perspective, and I can talk about like node operations because that's my area, is by broadening the breadth of node operators that participate in these large-scale kind of like cornerstone DeFi protocols on Ethereum, like Lido, by onboarding them as operators. So we've had operators from Hong Kong like Hashquark, from Singapore, RockX, from Korea, DSRV, and now recently A41 if the DAO vote goes through, plus another 2 operators from the APAC region being onboarded in this round, one from Australia and another one from Hong Kong. So it's not only about bringing diversity and strength and robustness to the Ethereum network by enfranchising participants from all over the world, but it's also about building resiliency from a regulatory perspective and from an economic security perspective.
So our point of view, so I'm going to echo the same in the sense that being part of a DAO, it tends to be a lot more organic than kind of like a pre-subscribed kind of strategy. But Asia is definitely an important market. It's one that we already have hundreds of node operators in. Just in Singapore alone, we've got 30 node operators. So we're building up that kind of capacity within Asia. It's definitely an important market in the sense that, I think the problems here are very attuned to crypto in general. Population density and all that sort of thing is very attuned to that. So, and also the fact that the population here are very eager to embrace technology, which is not the same everywhere. So I think that those sorts of things make Asia a fantastic market. But yeah, as I said, it's hard for us because it's a much more organic kind of growth situation.
Before we go into like Hashquark, Kathy, and Sean from Blockdaemon, just one quick question. So we see emergence or rising, not numbers, but quality of professional node operators in the Asia Pacific region. But from Rocket Pool side, do you see at-home validators like increasing as well in the APAC region?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, probably pretty much everywhere, but definitely here as well, because the idea is that we lower that barrier of entry as much as we can. Rocket Pool have been trying to do that in terms of the amount of collateral that you actually need to kind of like be a node operator, but also on the technical level in terms of making it super easy. So we've got a whole load of tools and documentation to kind of bring that barrier to entry down. So that makes it much easier to get into it. So that's where it is.
Nice, nice. The angles will be a little different from liquid staking protocols and the node operators ourselves. So let me ask first, Kathy, like for any players that we engage, like liquid staking protocols or protocols in general who are trying to tap into Asian market, how would Hashquark put inputs in terms of if you're helping out the GTM strategy of Lido or GTM strategy of Rocket Pool, what advices would you give in the region that Hashquark covers?
Okay. As I mentioned, actually, Hashquark and Hashkey Group is rooted in APAC market and especially in Hong Kong market. So as a quick setup, we are very familiar with the local government and how does the government, the agencies approach in terms of staking. And also we have already established a close connections with local business projects, universities, and also government officials in terms of Web3 ecosystem and the policy regarding virtual asset platforms. So that in order to help Lido and Rocket Pool and other great projects to onboarding to Hong Kong market and also other APAC markets, we could work closely with those projects in order to bring together a great brand synergies, because Hashkey Group has already established a brand image as a very trusted and licensed business group, and also because we are familiar with a lot of the local projects, we could help doing some advertising and co-organizing the events to spread the message. For example, to help Lido to onboard more node operators from a more diversified market to make it more decentralized.
You guys have to take in mind that due to the KBW, I couldn't send out the questions to these guys until this morning. So everything is impromptu. and Kathy was like was freaking out to John, send me the questions. But I need to ask though, representing the audience here. So in Hong Kong, I'm quite curious too. How does the Hong Kong monetary authorities or government sees the concept of staking or liquid staking? Just very curious.
Actually, from my personal perspective, I didn't see a very clear regulatory framework regarding staking. This is because the SSC of Hong Kong, the Security and Future Committee in Hong Kong, is actually adopting the principle of same business, same risk, and same rules, so that they are applying the rules from traditional financial market onto virtual asset related activities. So there is a problem that there is no certain activities like staking in traditional financial market, and that's why they are still working on business, like local business like Hashquark Group, to better understand this concept. And we are actually working closely with the governments and agencies to help them understand the concept to aiming at a increased level of clarity regarding regulatory framework covering staking industry. So yeah, it's still in the progress.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of important to demystify the regulatory stuff in Asia. I think a lot of the Westerners, when they come to APEC region, they assume that things are better here, but we are also playing in a very murky field from my point of view. The reason, if you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to answer, but does Hashquark Group pays tax for the staking yield as well? Okay, if you don't want to answer, that's fine. I'm a founder, so I can say whatever I want. A41 pays tax, but there is no applicable category per se in our regulation for validators to pay tax. So we have to come up with a very innovative way to pay tax. So we go to National Tech Service first and preemptively and say, hey, we think this applies to our way of making money and we want to pay tax, right? And then once they define the tax law later on, we're gonna sue them, probably, right? To get our money back.
Yeah, because they'll be like, looks good for now, but I'll let you know later, you know?
but I think the reason why I bring it up is because I'm also curious about what's happening in Hong Kong, because in Korea, nothing is certain. I can't really say further because my communications guys will kill me, but everything is so murky to the level that we have to preemptively take actions. And I feel like some of the people have this bias that everything in APAC is bright as pink. It's actually not. So quite curious about your thoughts in Hong Kong, and also from Sean too. I think he could also add a little bit of a different angle because he comes from Blockdaemon, goes back and forth between the Asian countries. So.
Yeah, just to go back to the topic of just APAC's importance, I think there's a couple different areas. So number one, I think we already kind of covered it. Obviously APAC is a growing region. The demographic, the middle class is all getting larger. Regulation is murky, but it's even, I would say, every region is murky, but Asia has been a big area of growth for us. And we're really on the other side, I would say, of Rocket Pool and Lido. They're looking for more node operators in Asia, but we're looking for additional chains to kind of validate. So for example, some chains have actually come out of Korea. For example, WeMix, XPLA. These are additional chains that are revenue sources for us. And so, there's a lot more chains that we can have that actually come out of Asia. And so it's a pretty strategically important area for us. On the other side, not just on the layer 1 perspective, but there's also been some layer 2s that have also come out of Asia too, as well. And so, as the number of layer 1s potentially compress from 2021 and a lot of people move to layer 2s on Ethereum, we have to potentially think about, not just validation revenue, but potentially as sequencers and provers, as they get decentralized, which ones are coming out of North America, which ones are coming out of Asia. And so, in conclusion, I think this is a super, super important area for us and has really kind of been one of our best performing regions, actually, in the last year.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. I think enough of Asia flavor to our panel. Let's move on to what all these guys, all these gigabrains are thinking about what's next for ETH staking field. I want to start off with Lido and Rocket Pool side in terms of, so when we talk about staking, like we talk about DVT or distributed validator technology and or restaking at the same time. I'm pretty curious, let's start off with the DVT side. I'm pretty curious on, like, in terms of what you're thinking about the DVT and how is it going to be implemented with your protocol 2023 or 2024, and what are the milestones that you have in terms of creating a DVT pool within your protocol?
Yeah, so DVT is definitely something that's been on our radar for a long time. The reason why it's been on our radar for a long time is because we've been trying to assess how we apply it to Rocket Pool. And it's actually kind of tricky, non-trivial, mainly because DVT works very, very well, but it doesn't work very well when there's a Sybil in a permissionless environment, and there's a threat of Sybil kind of attacks. So you have to kind of have a strong kind of economic mechanism that sits over the top that incentivizes and disincentivizes certain behaviors. And so that is where we're at the moment. So I think for us, DVT in the short term, we're focusing on things like squad staking, which is a bunch of people who know and trust each other, all working on a validator together. So that's our kind of like medium-term sort of objective with DVT. In the DVT, protocol wide is a much, much longer term solution, because we have to figure out what that crypto economic mechanism looks like to incentivize certain behaviors. So that's definitely something we're working on for that.
Yeah, from the Lido side, maybe I can just give some introduction to like how Lido has changed as a technology in the last 9 months. So in December of 22, the DAO basically approved Lido v2 to be designed, implemented, and then rolled out. The rollout happened in May 14th, I think, of 2023. And one of the two core features of v2 were, one, withdrawals, so like pure in-protocol unstaking. And the second one was turning Lido into a more modular architecture. So previously and currently, Lido only has one module, which is a curated operator registry, whereby the DAO selects which node operators are allowed to use the protocol and run validators as a part of it. It has always been the intent that Lido evolves into a protocol that has permissionless and non-permissioned elements. So the modular architecture of v2 allows for the development of what are essentially plugins that will expose different sets of node operators and their validators to the Lido protocol. So you can create modules that will use DVT as a technology and then attach into Lido to allow for DVT-based validators to run. And those modules might work in a permissioned or in a permissionless manner, kind of like they would in Rocket Pool. So within the next couple months, and again, none of this stuff is on a roadmap or fully approved yet, but what we'd like to see are the following. We have run 2 very successful DVT testnets using a module that works in the same way as the current curated module. So these are curated, almost squad-like DVT clusters, and we would like to see something like that on mainnet within the next 6 to 9 months. And then we are working closely with both at least OBOL and SSV networks for them to create for-purpose Lido modules that will use their infrastructure as the middleware that kickstarts a sustainable and permissionless DVT-based module and way to participate in the protocol.
And that DVT module is next year, right? Early next year?
I don't know the dates on that, because there's like a lot of design work involved, but just in terms of how long a module might take, it can't be less than 6 months, because there's a lot of work involved. And then you need to add like another 3 months for testing and audits. So it's usually on the span of like, I don't know, 9 to 16 months, depending on the complexity of the module. So a very simple module where we take the existing curated set and slightly change it so that it can work with DVT clusters is something that can happen in a few months. A wholesale new module based on SSV technology might take a year or more.
Nice. I think Blocknative and iOS, you guys are too nice, so I should probably say it. Like in our Korea conference, if anybody were talking while there was a panel, I kicked them out. On the backside, like please tell them there is a coffee shop on the upper floor, or else just please quiet down a little bit? Can somebody relay that to them? I'm not going to speak until they shut up. All right, let's restart. Sorry, Izzy. And sorry, Darren, you guys had to speak when everybody else was speaking. Let's move to Hashquark and Blockdaemon's angle on DVT and also restaking as well. I'll let Kathy to talk about DVT implementation, like how you actually see it from the node operator's perspective and how you guys have been preparing from the node operator who's located in Apex side as well. Just give a little bit of taste to it, and then let's move on to Sean for restaking and how you guys are preparing and how you guys are working with all these liquid staking protocols as well, like on that aspect too.
Okay. So regarding DVT, distributed validator technology, it has actually been on the radar of Hashquark for quite a long time, since 2021, the half year of 2021. We have been actively participating in SSV network as node operators, and we have been supporting from 4 to 5 testnet already, and currently SSV is on the midnight. Also, there is a liquidity protocol that's incubated by Hashkey Group called ePorter. It actually provides compliance IOSD for institutional players in Hong Kong market. Regarding this program, it has already received SSV grants to migrate validator onto SSV network. So this is another milestone on our past roadmaps. And moreover, we are supporting the DIVA protocol for DVT. And in terms of restaking, it's also a very advanced and great technologies that we are supporting right now. We are currently supporting as staker on EigenLayer restaking on both the testnet and the midnight.
So I would say, in short, Blockdaemon takes DVT and EigenLayer pretty seriously. And I'll talk through a little bit about the unit economics of staking, just for those who don't know. So staking, the business model of staking is essentially Blockdaemon, we clip a percentage of a commission on the rewards earned for staking. And then obviously our costs are running the validators, which is going to be kind of the hardware costs of running staking. So there's a couple factors right now I would say that are both push and pull. So as people know, as the staking ratio, for example, for ETH goes up, which is obviously one of the biggest proof of stake protocols, the actual rewards earned is going to go down, right? And then because there's no activity right now, MEV is also quite muted. And a lot of, I think, what people are going to talk about is the shift of MEV from the validators to actually where the intent originates. And so MEV is something that we expect to also potentially shift away from the validators as well. And obviously, as everyone here knows, we're in a bear market, so token prices haven't done as well either. So long story short, there's been a lot of things that's kind of really hurt the staking kind of margin profile and the staking business. And I think DVT also really kind of falls in this category as well. It's going to make staking as a business a little bit more challenged, just because a lot more competition when it comes to staking, right? Solo stakers, it's going to become a lot more decentralized, which is really great for the network. But for our business, it's going to be additional competition. But I think that's where kind of EigenLayer comes in and really becomes another source of revenue for us, because as EigenLayer, you can really kind of compound your yield, which means additional commission for us. And EigenLayer most likely is actually going to increase the hardware requirements of the validators. And so it's going to be a little bit more professionally run, hopefully. And so to answer the question, I think DVT and EigenLayer for us, they're both very important, and we'd expect to implement both, but I think it's going to have both a push and a pull factor in terms of our business model.
For node operators, it is kind of obvious why we like DVT, and for restaking, yeah, like we may have different opinions, but for DVT at least, like from our point of view, like implementation of DVT is like something obvious. But for Lido and Rocket Pool though, like you guys don't need to have DVTs. Like what would be the main incentives and the drives for you to actually think about the next move of your protocol with the DVT pool?
So to a certain extent, for the same reason that makes sense for node operators to do it, it also makes sense for the node operators that belong to a staking protocol to do it. There's a huge benefit in terms of technical resilience and minimizing the impact of potentially bad events happening or the events happening at all. So it's much more difficult to get slashed unless, of course, there's like a sibling scenario going on. It's much more difficult for a validator to not have good effectiveness or good performance. But it is perhaps possible to have more latency, and you need to find the right trade-off between how do you compose and structure clusters, and where do you pick the operators from, and how do you determine what makes good participation in a cluster so you don't have like free riding problems. But staking protocols benefit from those at the same rate that node operators might, like if you're running a local DVT kind of cluster for performance. But even more so from a resilience perspective, because if a cluster in a staking protocol is made up of operators from a bunch of different countries, it gains a lot of regulatory and jurisdictional resilience that a node operator that is just running in that normal corporate structure doesn't really benefit that much from. And the other thing is, and this is very, very important for the permissionless side of protocols, so I'll let Darren speak more about it, but the more you reduce these risks, the more you can reduce the amount of bond that is required for node operators to participate. And when you lower bonds, you lower barriers to entry, which means that you enfranchise more and more people to become node operators on the network, and that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, so for us, the collateral that a node operator puts up is very important. It does a couple of different jobs. First of all, it makes sure that they're economically aligned. It also makes sure that our liquid staking token is backed, well, not backed, but kind of insured by that collateral as well. And so those things are important. But if you can reduce the risk of slashing and increase that performance, the need for that becomes a little bit less and less. And so that's why. So one of the things is to be able to reduce that collateral and get more scale. But yeah, there's different ways of doing it. So we are kind of like still in the research phase of adjusting to that.
Thank you. How much time do we have left, Theo? How much time do we have left? 15? All right. Let's kick off the war. Let's do a quick around the room first. Who thinks the current dominance of Lido as a threat to the ETH ecosystem? Raise your hand. All right, sounds good, sounds good. Let's start off with Sean to give a little bit of a personal thought, and then we're gonna go into Lido, and we're gonna hear from Rocket Pool as well. But as a node operator for, I know you're professionally, you and I, and Hashquark too, we're all Lido operators in a sense. We've just onboarded. And what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you fear that the dominance is really actually a threat, and that to the whole ecosystem, or do you think it's just like an aggregated number of the validators who are just under the Lido and not really a threat?
So I'd say I'd wear two hats here. So a Blockdaemon hat and then really my own hat. As with my Blockdaemon hat on, unfortunately, we do have to like Lido just a little bit more because we are one of the node operators for Lido. And as you guys know, Rocket Pool, to be a node operator for Rocket Pool, you have to put up your own ETH, right? So for us as Blockdaemon, it's a little bit more capital intensive than just running nodes for Lido. And so from a professional perspective, we go Lido, right? So, but I say personally, kind of personally speaking, I'm a little bit more, obviously one of the biggest reasons and one of the biggest we joined crypto is because of decentralization. And so for me personally, I think just kind of following those principles, I think it's not really too good to get a protocol too big. But obviously, you know, as you guys know, like it's a free market, right? And I think just as humans, we kind of tend to congregate around kind of bigger and the best things. And so it's really kind of human nature. And then just personally speaking, I'd say I love all liquid staking tokens, whichever one offers the best yield in DeFi. That's where my money is. And so, so whichever has the best rewards, that's kind of where I like to put my money.
Let's start with Rocket Pool's Darren's thoughts on the current dominance of Lido. What's your thoughts? From my personal view, I'm pretty sure you guys don't really want to hear anything from Sol Validator, but I think personally that the current dominance is just a phenomenon that comes out from the lack of the products in the market yet that it will be able to usurp Lido at the moment. And I feel like, you know, it's a free market, so let the market decide. Currently, a lot of the people prefers Lido because of its network effect, and people feel like, you know, there is going to be a less risk or threat associated to using Lido, because we get scared when we're using DeFi, at least now. So Darren, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so Rocket Pool is a very heterogeneous community. There's lots of different opinions within the community. There's a certain amount of passion that comes with that. I think to be kind of objective, Ethereum researchers have basically said that, you know, there are certain thresholds that should not be broken by a staking protocol or provider, and so, you know, we kind of see that as, you know, advice to be listened to. From our perspective, and certainly from a Rocket Pool whole DAO perspective, but also from a core team perspective, we're just trying to make sure that we are the best competitor that we possibly can be. So just in the last 2 months, we've doubled in size. So, you know, we are definitely on that way of kind of becoming that competitor that it needs to stand. You know, and we kind of see that, you know, that's the way that we need to kind of work, is become, you know, much more scalable, much more efficient, and all this sort of thing. This takes time. We've kind of taken a very hard road up the mountain. Being a decentralized staking protocol is extremely hard. And so we're climbing that mountain, but we're going at it very, very fast now.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff to unpack there. So in general, if we think about what Darren's brought up, like I think Danny Ryan in his piece, he called it like the risks of LSD. In general, LSD is better. Like, let's not shoot ourselves in the foot with using like financial verbiage in the wrong way. But the risks that are outlined in that article are technically and from an operational perspective correct. The question is, what is the right treatment of these risks? In what manner? What are like the practical outcomes and effects of how these risks materialize based on the actors that are present in a certain system and the way that they're acting? And what are the possible effects and consequences, negative and positive, on the underlying ecosystem? So in this case, like the base layer of Ethereum. I do have one minor disagreement here with Darren, because I've spoken to researchers that don't agree with this, but the way that the conversations are being had in public right now, they do not feel comfortable saying anything about this publicly. So, I mean, you don't have to believe me, but I can give you some names and you can go talk to them afterwards if you want to. So there's a couple of things that are outlined there. So one is a smart contract risk perspective, right? If too much of the ether within Ethereum flows through Lido smart contracts, then there's too much smart contract risk localized in a certain set of smart contracts. That makes sense, but splitting up that same amount of ETH across multiple different set of smart contracts doesn't necessarily give you less risk. If you take ETH and you split it into 4 contracts instead of 5, but the 3 have much worse security properties than the 1, then that's not necessarily better. That doesn't mean that Lido is necessarily better from a security perspective, but you need to consider that when you're thinking about saying, what happens, what are the second order effects of capping something and then letting something essentially feed off of something else being forcefully limited. A second thing there has to do with the operational, let's say, levers that the Lido protocol and the Lido DAO, because they are two separate things, have on the actual validators of the Ethereum network. So Ethereum has been quite carefully constructed such that the execution layer, like where stuff happens on Ethereum, and the consensus layer, the thing that drives like the train, are like barely talk to each other. And when they talk to each other, they can only say very, very specific things. So there's no way for any amount of stake on the execution layer to directly say to the validators on the consensus layer, do something against the network. Like we cannot send instructions, no user can, and no user can do it via Lido. It's not something that's added to operators or to validators to say, do this, like change the logic of how you calculate certain transactions or something, and so attack the network. You could do it if all Lido node operators were forced to run sidecar software, right? There are certain types of other staking protocols that are considering doing things like this, but this is actually something that Lido does not do. And in fact, it expects that node operators run the least amount of software possible, and that if they are ever running sidecars, that they're open source, built from source, and that the people that are running them can actually understand what those things are doing. And so you have the separation of concerns in terms of, is there a direct attack or an indirect attack possible? Indirect attacks can happen via governance, right? Where LDO holders can get together and say, if you node operators don't agree with what we want you to do, for example, attack the network, then we'll offboard you. And then we need to think about what are the mechanisms through which something like that works. To offboard an operator, first of all, there has to be a DAO vote, and then you somehow have to turn off their validators. Currently, that's not possible in Ethereum. So it's raising a stick without the ability to use it, which means like it would be really, really dumb to ever do anything like that in the first place. Eventually, there might be triggerable exits, right? Which is the idea that you can exit a validator on the consensus layer from the execution layer, and that would allow the DAO to have this power. But by that time, what DAO contributors are working on is something called dual governance, which is basically giving ST-ETH holders the ability to veto DAO actions that would be potentially malicious or ruinous to the network, to at least give people enough time to exit and withdraw their stake before something like that happens. And the other thing is that you have to think about like the actual process through which node operators are selected, found, and how they interplay with each other in terms of what they're trying to do on the network. So everybody says Lido is one entity. Like if you are ever privy to like the chats that happen between node operators, and hopefully you soon will be, you will realize that it's really not. There is the same kind of like rough consensus that you see around Ethereum itself happens around the actions that happen through the Lido DAO and through the Lido protocol. It's really a coordination mechanism. If you examine the state of the network before Lido was a thing, where there was 2 or 3 exchanges running more than 30% of the network, like 2 of them by themselves were at some point like 37%. And then you examine what has happened to the network as a result of that stake essentially being redistributed into a mechanism that spreads stake as equally as possible across as many as possible operators as possible, and at the same time enfranchises good behavior in the network. So everybody's like, oh, like OFAC relays, Lido is going to censor every block. Lido is the protocol with the smallest incidence of censorship in all of Ethereum. You talk about client diversity. The client teams are a part of Lido. Nobody was running Lodestar until a couple of months ago. Now ChainSafe is running 9,000 Lodestar validators. And the opportunity to run validators at that scale that they got through participating in the Lido protocol allowed them to make changes to their client that it performs at the level of clients like Prism and Lighthouse previously. So when we only focus on like the tail risks and the specific negative effects that might come as a result of that, we ignore the positive externalities, and we also ignore the secondary order risks that might happen if we don't do that.
Thank you. Has that alleviated some of the fears? Like I think I sensed some people were actually like expressing towards a Lido dominance, but Darren, has that alleviated fear of yours as well? Like from?
Not particularly, no.
I think I mean, a lot of the discussions right now that's happening in crypto Twitter in regards to Lido dominance, I personally feel like it's very temporary, and things will be more resolved within a year. But at the same time, I just feel like we need to wait until. I mean, there were discussions like capping the Lido's dominance to like less than 33%, but I think that's a very stupid decision if we were to do it, because you're basically letting the inferior product. I'm not saying everybody's inferior than Lido, but you're basically like stipulating the inferior product to have larger market share through those type of actions. I mean, that's my personal thought. I'm not representing 841 on that. So
Maybe like to give an idea about how I think about this stuff, and it's not the same things, but there are very close analogs. Should we cap the amount of total DeFi that is on Ethereum because there's too much DeFi in Ethereum, and if something were to happen to Ethereum, all of crypto would blow up? It's basically the same argument, right?
Yeah.
There are differences in terms of how governance works, how coordination works, right? The fact that Ethereum has soft consensus, whereas Lido has hard consensus via the LDO token. But Ethereum has had all of this time to mature into that version of itself, and it's also not done maturing yet. So a part of the reason why protocols like Lido and Rocket Pool cannot have soft governance or be ownerless is because they must constantly adapt to the changing environment that they're in, which is imposed upon them by their base network. If Ethereum is changing things that affect, let's say, like the core staking dynamics, you cannot have a viable LST that is non-upgradable. So until projects can ossify from like a technical perspective, it's a little bit unfair to expect that they have to, and if that they haven't done it, there must be some like ulterior motive for that.
I think Dell just gave me 5 minutes sign, so I'll probably let Sean and Kathy to wrap it up today. Any last remarks that you guys have on the current Lido versus others, or like for the whole staking in APAC field? Any last remarks coming from you? We'll be grateful.
Just generally speaking, as existing node operators, we are seeing that the staking industry is on the verge of a new cycle of innovations, led by certain middleware solutions like DVT, as we just talked about today, restaking, liquidity protocols, and also we are seeing new projects like the one SAUVE introduced by Flashbots. That is a EVM-compatible blockchain that could help unified sequencing for multiple blockchains. Like these advanced technologies and innovations can help existing node operators to open up new playgrounds, which is very excited for us. We are seeing the staking economy is transitioning from being a monolith to more modularization with shared security, and we are excited to be a part of this, and we have been actively participating in testnets and all these different protocols and technologies to involve those in our staking tech stack. Yeah, that will be my last words in this panel.
I think we talked a lot about the topic of staking already. I think just from Blockdaemon's perspective, like, crypto moves quick. We as a company also need to move quick. I think the question for us, we had a lot of change coming out of 2021, really because ETH was a little bit too slow to scale, but with the advent of layer 2s, I think that's going to be a big change. And so I think for staking, we as a company has to also evolve, right? Is transaction ordering, is a majority of that going to happen at the layer 1 level, or is that going to happen at the layer 2 level? And so ultimately, I think what we're going to watch for is how many chains are there actually going to be beyond this cycle. And so that's something that we're paying a very close eye to.
The evolution of Validator is something that we can cover in other sessions probably next year when I invite you for our conference. But thank you guys so much for listening to us. It was actually my honor to actually be with all these Giga Brains as a panel. And as always, I think our communications guys are right. I'm too spicy to be on a panel as moderator. But thank you guys so much. Thank you.